Welcome back to the Citizens Defending Freedom Show. Coming up today, we are joined by Stephanie, Citizens Defending Freedom's Law and Policy Specialist, to discuss how citizens can take a stand and make their voices heard to stop the Biden administration's overreach with Title IX. But first, before we get started, head to our website, citizensdefendingfreedom.com, and hit the subscribe button to make sure you don't miss out on any of our content. Citizens Defending Freedom is urging the public to take action now by contacting their elected members of the U.S. House of Representatives and Senate to stop the Biden administration's unconstitutional Title IX rule change by asking their representatives to sponsor, co-sponsor, and support a Congressional Review Act joint resolution of disapproval. Title IX is a sweeping civil rights law that was introduced, debated, and ultimately passed by Congress in 1972 that prohibits sex-based discrimination at federally funded colleges and K-12 schools. The new rules, which were not approved by Congress, fundamentally alter the definition of biological sex in the congressional intent of Title IX to provide women and girls equal opportunity in education programs. The new rules are slated to take effect on August 1st, 2024. Stephanie, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Can you give a rundown on how we got here and explain the new Title IX finalized rule?
Absolutely. So in June 2020, the Supreme Court issued the Bostick v. Clayton County decision, which was a Title VII employment discrimination case involving allegations of sexual orientation and gender identity ultimately being the reasons for the cause of termination with the plaintiffs involved in that case. Subsequently, the Biden administration in January and in March of 2021 employed the Bostick decision to essentially advocate for Title IX changes. But under the Administrative Procedure Act and the Major Questions Doctrine and a few other pertinent legislation, it's actually required for congressional approval to be secured before any kind of change to federal authority is made. So the Bostick decision did set a dangerous precedent for that type of misuse or misapplication to occur. However, it is worth noting that the Bostick decision, or the Supreme Court in the Bostick decision rather, did specifically articulate that they were not going to extend their ruling past Title VII employment discrimination application. In other words, refrain from commenting on how it would impact Title IX or any other federal statutes. Despite this, however, again, the Biden administration did issue 2 executive orders on this, and this was followed up by a notice of interpretation by the Department of Education's Office of Civil Rights in June of 2021. And that essentially is what led 20 states approximately a year later to receive an injunction upon filing a lawsuit alleging essentially unconstitutionality of these changes. And this was even prior to the presentation of the NPRM, or the Notice of Proposed Rulemaking, that came out in July of 2022. And when that took place, the Federal Register, the Department of Education, through the Federal Register, received approximately 240,000 comments, which was record-breaking for the department, which contributed to about a year, a little bit over a year delay in reviewing the Title IX proposed change, which essentially would unconstitutionally amend the text of Title IX that otherwise was created to protect women and girls, containing the language of on the basis of sex discrimination, to now include, amongst other categories, sex stereotyping, sexual orientation, and gender identity. And so upon receiving these comments and reviewing the comments as is required under federal law, the Biden administration in February of this past year, 2024, announced that the rule was with the Office of Management and Budget, which is with the executive branch, and particularly the Office of Information and Regulatory Affairs. They hosted something called the 12866 meeting period in which organizations and members of the public can participate to make their voice heard and document their stance on Title IX. Citizens Defending Freedom was amongst such organizations to do that, and we did vocalize our dissent and our arguments for dissension. Despite this, however, rather predictably, the Department of Education announced approximately 1 month later, April 19th, that they had gone ahead and finalized the unconstitutional Title IX changes, which again have usurped congressional approval and authorization, have violated principles upon which our nation has been founded, like checks and balances, like separation of powers. And so now we find ourselves at a dilemma, but it has resulted in actions being taken, including now over 20 states that have filed lawsuits, including Florida, Georgia, and Texas, alleging violations of the aforementioned Administrative Procedure Act, amongst other essential legislative authority that otherwise would provide a sense of why these rule changes are in fact unlawful.
How will this impact schools that receive federal funding? And could this impact homeschooling?
Yeah, so any school that receives just $1 of federal funding will be expected to comply come August 1st, 2024, which is the day that this rule is slated to go into effect to comply with the Title IX rule changes. The Department of Education has made repeatedly clear that compliance is the necessary and expected condition to which institutions must abide if they want to continue to receive federal financial assistance. So this would include any private schools, any Christian schools, charter schools, and even homeschooling programs that benefit from any kind of federal financial aid.
What can we anticipate in the months to come, and what steps can citizens take to protect themselves from this federal overreach?
Absolutely. So we're encouraging folks to go to our website and educate themselves on the Title IX rule changes to make use of our resources there, but to also participate in our call to action, urging you to contact your congressional officials. So that includes House of Representative members as well as your senators, imploring them to essentially sponsor or co-sponsor any kind of bill that pertains to the Congressional Review Act, otherwise known or collectively referred to as the CRA, and making sure that they ultimately take their stance against these unlawful Title IX changes. It's worth noting that one such bill that is currently being discussed and has essentially received quite a bit of attention in recent times. It includes Representative Mary Miller out of Illinois, who has expressed that she will be introducing a bill alleging violations of the Congressional Review Act, essentially, and trying to employ the Congressional Review Act to stop these unlawful changes from going into effect. So there have been a number of congressmen who have expressed interest in supporting this legislative initiative, and so we just are monitoring that closely, and again encourage folks to check our website and continue to go there for any kind of updates. We also have an entire page focused on latest developments, so that's dedicated to providing you with up-to-date daily overview of any kind of Title IX changes that have taken place, anything pertaining to the Title IX proposed changes, including any news pertaining to the lawsuits that have been filed, as well as efforts from various state superintendents pushing back against this rule. We're also encouraging folks to go to their school boards and to encourage them to pass a resolution, essentially stating on the record that they will be pushing back against the Title IX changes, essentially declaring non-compliance. And this is something that we've already seen take place with Carroll Independent School District in Texas. We've also seen it in Sarasota County in Florida. And so there are a number of states that are beginning to express interest in taking this stance, and we would encourage folks to do everything in their power to essentially motivate your community to similarly take this stance.
Thank you, Stephanie. Again, we want to encourage citizens to act by contacting their elected members of Congress in the House and Senate to sponsor, co-sponsor, and support a Congressional Review Act joint resolution of disapproval to halt the Biden administration's unlawful changes to Title IX. By visiting our website, concerned individuals can find the contact information for their elected members of Congress and Senate to make their voices heard in defense of equal opportunity for women and girls, and to restore the legislative authority of Congress. That's all for today, but before we go, we want to leave you with our inspirational Bible verse of the week. This week's verse is Nehemiah 1:5. Then I said, Lord, the God of heaven, the great and awesome God, who keeps his covenant of love with those who love him and keep his commandments. As you can see, Citizens Defending Freedom is doing important work. Help us today in our fight to protect children, help ensure election integrity, and encourage pastors to get engaged. Please visit citizensdefendingfreedom.com where you can learn more about our organization and generously contribute to our cause. Have a great day and make sure to like us on social media and tell your friends about the great things we're doing. God bless.